Hello and welcome to Blueprints for Modern Government Digital, brought to you by KPMG. I'm your host, George Jackson. For many organizations, it's been a tumultuous year that cast an intense spotlight on data agility. As organizations transform their digital operations, they need to consider more than just tech. Digital transformation can also involve rethinking business processes, improving workplace culture, and elevating services to meet customer expectations. This episode of Blueprints for Modern Government will bring together digital leaders from the federal, state and local, and private sectors to share best practices, modern methods, and cutting-edge tech designed to help government keep pace with innovation. Let's get things started with Daryl Roberts, Information Operations Program Executive Officer at the Defense Logistics Agency, Lindsay Saul, Chief Data and Analytics Officer at DLA, and here in studio with me, Joe Klimovich, Managing Director at KPMG and former Chief Information Officer at the Department of Justice. So Daryl, let's go to you first, if I could. Define what that term means to DLA, digital transformation. What does it look like inside the agency?
Well, first, thanks for having us today. And at DLA, digital business transformation really means it's a way for us to use IT modernization to help our supply chains and our workforce relook at our business processes and the way we support the mission. As America's Combat Logistics Agency, we're always working to stay ahead in terms of technology and ensure we're providing the best possible support to our warfighters. And so in doing that, we're really looking at how do we transform to a more hybrid work model, not just for the workforce, but how we support our customers to provide transparency and more efficiencies in getting our job done. The pandemic has really taught all of us a lot, particularly us here at DLA, in terms of how we support the mission during a pandemic, but also our support to the nation in the pandemic. And so we had a lot of virtual remote work software and technologies we implemented in terms of virtual private networks, virtual desktop initiatives, which allowed our workforce, even prior to the COVID pandemic and remote work, to have flexibility and also allow us to still support the mission.
So Lindsay, you're relatively new to your position. Congratulations on the new gig there. Tell us about your vision to set the table. Where do you want to take data analytics for DLA?
Yes, thank you so much. So we have been in this chief data office now for 3 years, and just recently there's been a shift to the chief data and analytics office. And that is when I took the role 2 months ago in this position that now incorporates analytics. So I was a part of the building of the data and analytics strategy as a data and analytics strategist, and it's time for a refresh. And so what we're doing now is we are trying to look at the digital strategy that Mr. Roberts has implemented with the business, and the data strategy shall align to that digital strategy so that we are tackling the most critical issues related to our technology and our data to drive transformation.
Joe, you led these type of initiatives at the Department of Justice for years, NGA before that. You've worked inside agencies for a long time. What are some of the top challenges that you see right now to these kind of large digital transformation efforts?
I think, thanks, George. Thanks. Great to be here. Great to see you again. I think one of the biggest challenges is governance. You have to figure out how you're going to make decisions in these things, setting that strategic direction, getting executive sponsorship, making sure that the employees are engaged, feel like they're part of the process. Change management is huge. Communications is huge. Also, making sure that your digital transformation is using cutting-edge architectural paradigms. There's a lot of things that make it incredibly easy today to move forward with digital transformation. The cloud, modern platforms, low-code, no-code, an incredible number of microservices, micro-virtualization, micro-segmentation. These technologies are out there, but then ultimately the execution and being able to execute on this And then if you're successful, you've got to be able to manage across these different platforms, different cloud environments. There's a lot that goes into this. But I would just say that, to me, digital transformation is, you have to look at it from a holistic perspective. It's bringing together the technology, but also the processes, the people, the culture, all that has to play together as one.
So Daryl, Joe mentions emerging tech. What emerging tech solutions are you employing or maybe looking to employ in the near future in DLA?
Well, so to Joe's point, I mean, our strategy here at DLA is really building that platform of platforms concept, really making it much easier for the workforce to do their job as well as interact with our customer base. And so some of the technologies we've looked at, we definitely have a multi-cloud strategy, leveraging several cloud providers, as well as partners like ServiceNow, which have allowed us to not just relook at how we do our access to our systems, but also how we provide transparency to our customers. We're really moving to more virtual agents and things of that nature where customers can do self-service. And then the other part of that is working with Lindsay and her team in terms of ensuring we're thinking about data strategy and architecture up front. And so to Joe's earlier points, it's a holistic effort from a governance perspective for us to make sure that we're not just providing transparency, we're not just processing transactions, but we're also getting the data to a point where we can do more predictive analytics in AI and machine learning in the future.
So Lindsay, what building blocks do you have to put in place, to Daryl's point? I mean, Joe and I were talking before going on the air that the technology changes at a really rapid pace, but the data does not. So what do you have to do to the data now to really take advantage of those emerging technological solutions that Daryl points to?
Sure. So that's a really good question, George. Let me just start off by saying that there's a framework based on offensive and defensive data strategies that Thomas Davenport talks about in the Harvard Business Review. And traditionally, organizations like ours have been very offensive in their strategies in order to tackle the latest and greatest technologies, artificial intelligence, all the demands that we're getting from DoD. However, we need to really focus on that more defensive strategy when it relates to data governance, data management. But we're within that defensive strategy, we have to look at both tackling the use cases that are most critical to the business, as well as standing up data management roles and responsibilities. Right now, we have a lot of folks dealing with the data, but in a somewhat disjointed and non-systematic fashion. So we can continue to operate like that, but I think the value that our office, the CDAO, brings to this and standing up true traditional data governance by leveraging the lessons learned and best practices from our data management maturity assessment will go a long way in making things more efficient, making our data more accessible, visible, understandable, all of the goals that are put forward in our DoD data strategy.
So Joe, Lindsay mentions this defensive posture. Cybersecurity seems to me to be something that agencies need to focus on while they're executing these digital transformation strategies. What does that look like? What tools or policies do they have at their fingertips that they can really deploy there?
Sure. George, when I look at digital transformations, it's about improving services, reducing costs, rapidly creating value, but it's also improving your cyber posture. And one of the things that I've always tried to do when I was in the government, and I'm very glad to see that the President signed the executive order in May, really emphasizing zero trust. You've got to be able to build zero trust into your environment where, as you go through this, and really there you're focusing on how do you segregate out the users from the devices to the data, the network, and the services, and be able to rapidly assess whether this person is, has the rights and the privileges to access this data, but build it into your overall IT architecture, and then make sure your data has the definitions in place, that you can actually make those kind of calls real time. But cybersecurity has to be built in up front in your digital transformation.
That seems like a really challenging thing to do inside DLA, Daryl, just because of the nature of your agency itself. I mean, you support the warfighter all over the world. Is that just like a consistent, difficult challenge for the organization?
I think it's a challenge for all organizations. The thing about cybersecurity, to Joe's point, you're always being attacked from some facet, whether it be foreign enemies or hackers that just want to see if they can break into your system. And so for us, we've baked that cybersecurity into our development. So we have definitely started deploying DevSecOps environment across our applications so that our cybersecurity is part of our design, our development. As we work with Lindsay and her team and we talk about data strategy, it's how do you secure that data as well. And so to Joe's point, having cybersecurity as the fourth pillar of our programs when we talk about delivery, we make sure that's at the forefront of everything we do.
So Lindsay, how is that further complicated by the explosion in mobile endpoints that we're seeing right now? At the top of the program, Daryl talked about this shift to remote work. It's not just something that DLA is dealing with, but all or nearly all agencies in government are dealing with right now. How is that impacting those data considerations?
So it does play, cybersecurity does play a huge role in this. And I would also say that as we expand our data to mobile applications and make it more accessible, we also have to be cognizant of the risks that come with that. And so as part of our data governance framework, we also have in place our chief privacy officer, and he at DLA is working to make data more secure, and he is also working with our cybersecurity team at DLA to accomplish more secure data. I will also say, it recently came to light that there was some complications with data being shared openly through APIs when it came to the situation in Afghanistan, where we had to quickly remove data from those open sources. So things like that, we're really taking a hard, close look at to make sure that the data that we do share is okay for the right audience. And once we do so, making sure that the right protections are around it by having the functional business units really take a hard, close look at that and answer those questions up front.
So Joe, these digital transformations are about so many components. A big one that we haven't covered yet is CX, the customer experience aspect of things. DLA and other agencies, I think, have been in this years-long shift away from paper-based methods of processing to more digital methods of processing. But talk a little bit about some of the, best practices around CX that agencies should be looking towards.
Sure, George. I think more than ever, citizens, customers are demanding a connected government with integrated services, relevant experiences, and then self-serve. Everybody wants to be able to find the information they need when they need it and do that so on their own and make it really easy. I think we're also going to see the public is going to demand services that are easier to, in ways that are easier to conduct business with the government. When the pandemic started, there were a lot of services that people really couldn't imagine how those services could be provisioned to the public, but we found ways. I also think the workforce is going to continue to demand these flexibilities of working remotely. And again, your digital transformation needs to consider CX up front. Really reimagine what that user-citizen experience is going to be like from the beginning. And that means bringing the users in, going through use cases, different scenarios, but it's got to be done up front.
Daryl, tie a bow on this conversation for us. We've talked about a lot where do you see DLA's biggest need or set of needs? What do you need most from the federal community?
Well, I think it's just continuing to have an openness in what we call communities of practice. We're all going after the same goals that we've talked about today in terms of transparency, efficiencies, more effective data analysis, analytics, AI, machine learning. And so as we're all continuing this journey of digital business transformation, I think sharing our lessons learned, our best practices, our experiences with certain technologies, it's going to be key. We're part of several communities of practice in terms of AI, machine learning, bots, and partners with platforms. Lindsay works with the other CAOs across OSD and the services as well. And so as long as we keep this open dialogue about best practices and lessons learned, I think we'll get there. To Joe's earlier point, technology doesn't fail. It's often how we implement and how we plan to implement. And so a continued focus on governance is what we're really trying to do here at DLA, as well as empowering the workforce, because they're the users of this system. They're the collectors and providers of this data and information. And so we want to make sure it's the best experience for them, but also bring in our stakeholders as well as we build these use cases. So empowerment, having governance and strategy are things that we're focusing on.
Closing message of empowerment, great way to leave it. Daryl Roberts, Information Operations Program Executive Officer at DLA. Thanks for being here, sir.
Thank you so much.
And Lindsay Saul, Chief Data and Analytics Officer at DLA. Lindsay, thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
And here in studio with me, Joe Klimovich, KPMG. Always good to see you.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
After the break, we'll continue this digital conversation with IT leaders from the state of Texas, how they've reacted to the changing work and consumer landscapes and turned challenges into tangible opportunities. You're watching Blueprints for Modern Government on GovExec TV. I'll be right back.
Modernizing government. It's not just about improving technology. It's an organizational shift in process, priorities, and culture. Government leaders must embrace a new agenda, one aimed at what comes next for business and all of society.
Agencies have new opportunities before them and the challenge of keeping pace with a continuously evolving landscape, embracing a new generation of citizens and colleagues, leveraging today's and tomorrow's technology to succeed at pace, building trust with each other and constituents, safeguarding the huge data sets needed to drive improved services, and meeting the mission. Now more than ever, government agencies are focused on the customer or citizen experience.
The journey to modernization is different for every agency and is focused on the agency's core mission and services. And KPMG has helped agencies accelerate down the path using our framework for success: connected, powered, trusted. We are here to help you connect with each other, with your constituents and your workforce to accelerate the attainment of value by leveraging technology and to help you improve trust.
Government agencies must continue to flex to meet the increasing expectations of the modern citizen and the future workforce. COVID-19 required reaction at every turn. Now is the time to use that to your advantage. Take the gains made, convert that momentum to anticipate the road ahead with a roadmap for modernization.
Welcome back to Blueprints for Modern Government Digital on GovExec TV. I'm George Jackson. For IT leaders in state and local government, the past 2 years offered valuable lessons in workforce, trust, and experience. It tested their resolve and pushed them toward a more digital future. What are the next steps at the state level? Let's find out. Jennifer Buis is Director of Strategic Digital Services at the State of Texas Department of Information Resources. Daniel Texar is CIO in the Office of the Texas Secretary of State. and Deanna Bennett, Advisory Managing Director at KPMG. Team, welcome. Excited to get into this conversation. Dan, let's start with you. Give us a sense of what modernization looks like in the Texas office of the Secretary of State right now.
Well, we were recently funded by the Texas legislature to really take on a large-scale modernization effort. And for us, that's focusing on our business services. And that's more digital services for our filings and really looking at a lot of our infrastructure on the back end. But our main focus is better digital services for our stakeholders.
So what were the systems, Dan, that you were working on? What did they look like? How old were they? What kind of, challenges were those sort of systems posing for the organization?
Yeah, so the system that we use for business filings is about 20 years old. It actually just hit its 20th birthday here recently, and it's challenging to maintain, certainly for my staff, and certainly for our business staff. There's a lot of workarounds in place that we have to do to keep things like process agents running, right? To continue to accept fax documents and paper documents as we're required by law. So, all of those sort of challenges with a 20-year-old system, as you can imagine, are extremely difficult and taxing for our staff.
Jennifer, let's pivot over to you. Where is the state of Texas digitally going generally right now?
Yeah, so we are seeing a lot of a prioritization for IT modernization. Our legislature has put a huge focus on that, and really trying to modernize to enable our workforce and to enable our constituents to access the services that through digital solutions. And in addition, promoting broadband access to all, because if you have a digital service but you don't have connectivity, your constituents aren't able to consume that service. So there's a big focus on modernizing those systems and making sure the connectivity is there from the state of Texas viewpoint.
Deanna, I know you do work in Texas, and you're actually joining us from Texas. We have a Texas trio as part of this section of our program here today, but let's step back from Texas and talk a little bit more generally. What you've heard, is that common to what states across the landscape are sort of pursuing, experiencing regarding modernization, this digital transformation effort?
Absolutely. So governments are becoming modern and digital so they can serve their constituents in a more empathetic, seamless, and frictionless way. So modernizing their technology and their infrastructure allows them to connect a citizen experience that puts the citizen first in the way they access services at the heart of how they're working today. So it's not just their internal systems, it's the way citizens can access and interact across any agency that they need.
Talk a little bit about culture too, Deanna. These transformations involve the reformation of business processes, organizational models, and more. What are some of the big sticking points there?
So as technology improves and we all learn to access it more effectively, and as systems modernize, we're able to use any device at any time inside the workforce or out. And as COVID and the pandemic showed us, we need hybrid working models that allow easy access, but secure access from home and from the office. And states were forced to modernize their technology and their services for their workforce quickly and securely. And now they're learning, how do we create new hybrid models to continue to work effectively from anywhere? That's a big cultural shift.
Dan, I'd like to talk a little bit about emerging technology. You mentioned, a system that's 20 years old, but you're simultaneously employing artificial intelligence, other methods of emerging technology. How do those two seemingly kind of disparate approaches work together?
Well, to be honest, that's something we're figuring out as we speak. We've got an AI project in development right now for our chatbot services to hopefully do some call deflection out of our call center that gets a little overwhelmed sometimes, and hopefully, we have that digital experience that people want to go to our website and get the right answers right there much more efficiently than picking up the phone and calling.
Texas.gov is another thing, in addition to AI, that you're really focused on. Talk about the importance of that site, what it represents to those business services that you mentioned earlier in the program.
Certainly. So we're in the beginning stages of a partnership with DIR through Texas.gov, and they've really developed a great model there for sort of one place for citizens to go and consume a lot of state services. So we hope to become a part of that. But it'll do a lot for us in terms of identity management and really just providing a place to go for citizens to start to consume not only our services, but a lot of other state agencies involved as well.
Jennifer, as I understand it, you've employed techniques of human-centered design, others to improve the CX aspects of that site and kind of how it works with constituents. Can you talk us through a little bit about what you went through there and what you hope to accomplish?
Right. So we built a new Texas by Texas, or we call it TXT, digital assistant. And it's really an account-based platform where you can access your government services. And when we were going through that process to develop this new platform, we really focused on that human-centered design element, and really focusing on the end user and their outcome, kind of what Deanna was speaking to, and really looking at what is our constituent or our consumer struggles, and then how do we help them with those, so more or less have the human perspective be at the end of the product. So we are really excited. We have launched vehicle registration renewals and driver's license renewals through the platform, and we hope to keep rolling out more government services through this one account based and leverage it for our constituents.
So I'd imagine that digital transformation involves a layer of security to it as well. Specifically, I'm thinking of IAM, Identity Access Management. Am I reading that right, Jennifer?
Yes, absolutely. I think right now it's not only, as we talk about modernizing these applications, it's so important to have the security behind them. So it's not just a push for having more modern solutions, but having extremely secure solutions. And so having that identity access management behind it, leveraging the multi-factor authentication, these are all just technologies that we're able to have and provide to our constituents, that it's not difficult for the constituent, but it also creates a really good and secure process for them.
Deanna, we can't possibly talk about all of the emerging technologies or techniques that Texas is deploying in the short amount of time that we have here today, but I do want to focus on at least one more, digital assistance. What role does that play in this conversation, this kind of push to a more digital future, a push to better CX?
So humans are going to continue to be important in every business process, but they may not be the first step in the process. So chatbots and digital assistants can sort through very quickly and rapidly all of the various challenges and then take a constituent's need and put it right in front of the right person to answer their problems, cutting time out of the process and streamlining how quickly a citizen can get a service or a solution in place. And it takes a lot of guesswork out of the process. So workforce will now be retrained and reskilled to pick up and interact with technology in a very different way. But ultimately, it provides more quick, easier service to the citizens and better outcomes.
Dan, all of these efforts rely on data, clean data, usable data, data that integrates with disparate parts of your, IT ecosystem there in Texas. Talk about data management strategy for a moment, because data is coming in a deluge, is the word that we use to often describe it at the federal level. What does it look like at the state level, and how do you sort of manage that deluge of data?
Yeah, it's certainly a challenge, and that's something that we're rapidly trying to mature our data management program in terms of our business services. It's very important, obviously, to us. And the 87th Texas Legislature just recently had passed the Senate Bill 475, and that did a lot. It's a pretty robust bill in terms of information management and security. And that's really laying the groundwork along with DIR to provide some more guidance for agencies and to really require assessments around data management and data governance. So I think that's going to be a huge help, but it's obviously a challenge for agencies, like SOS. They're a little bit smaller to go out and get that skill set and implement those sort of things. But it's certainly something that we're up to the challenge.
Jennifer, another potential challenge, especially in a state as large and diverse as Texas is the workforce. Bringing them on board, getting them comfortable with new ways of operating, these digital transformations that you're undertaking. Can you talk a little bit about maybe some of the challenges too, or a success story that you have around transforming the workforce while you're transforming the IT?
Yeah, absolutely. We have seen, we've used and leveraged a lot of collaboration technologies, just like everyone has over the past couple of years. But we've also been trying to preserve that workplace culture. It's essentially your employees are your backbone, and they're so critical to the success. And so we've really tried to promote some and engage our workforce through some innovative, just culture, making sure that all of the workforce is engaged, and even though they might be virtual, that they're participating and they're connecting with their peers. We've also tried to, have some different areas of the mobile apps that might be relevant for our employees. So really trying to leverage technology and how to keep that culture and motivation for the workforce.
Deanna, as we come to a close in this portion of our conversation, I'm hoping you'll tie a bow on this for us. What's just over the horizon? What should IT leaders, not just in Texas, but all across the country, be focusing on right now to really efficiently manage these massive digital transformations?
So I believe that Jennifer talked about a human-centered design. That's where everything starts. At its center is trust, making sure that your citizens know how to access safe and secure information, how to make sure that they are connected in a seamless way. And I think IT leaders are the visionaries now for how to connect their front, back, middle office, connect their citizens. And I think they need to continue to drive that vision for their own organization and for the citizens that they serve.
Deanna Bennett, Advisory Managing Director at KPMG. Deanna, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Daniel Texar, CIO in the Office of the Texas Secretary of State. Dan, thanks for being here, sir.
Thanks for having me.
And Jennifer Buis, Director of Strategic Digital Services at the State of Texas Department of Information Resources. Jennifer, great to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks.
And thank you, the audience, for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed our Blueprints for Modern Government series and are able to take some new processes back to your organizations to help break down silos, streamline workflows, and boost efficiencies across all your key functions. For GovExec TV, I'm George Jackson.